Just remind you of our top story, the Israeli attack which hit close to a United Nations school in northern Gaza. At least 40 people have been killed, another 45 injured. It's the third strike on a UN school in the last 24 hours. We can now speak to Mark Regev. He's a spokesperson for the Israeli Prime Minister. Thanks so much for joining us. Moments ago I spoke with John Ging from UNRWA, and he called for an international investigation. Would Israel agree to that?
We've already had our own initial investigation, and unfortunately this is another example of terrorists from Hamas brutalizing a civilian institution. It's not the first time it's happened, but Hamas has no qualms apparently whatsoever about using a UN facility and the students there as a human shield. We have specific information that not only were shots fired, not shots, mortar shells, numerous were fired from this institution on Israeli troops in the area, but when our troops were fired back, causing the casualties, that there were Hamas casualties. We have specific names. There was a Hamas rocket squad, I believe Imad and Hassan Abu Askar. The names are known by the people in the area. A Hamas rocket squad filing out, using that UN institution as a cover, and unfortunately using the people there as a human shield. Right, this is a war crime, and Hamas is directly responsible. I urge your reporter there not to believe the Hamas propaganda. Go look for those two people. I understand that Hamas are currently hiding the bodies.
Why not? Why don't we do even better than that, Mark? And as I said, my initial question was, why not allow an international investigation? If you have such strong evidence, if there are indeed war crimes, why not allow an international investigation?
I think, and to be frank, the international community and the UN itself has severe difficulties working in the Gaza Strip. Hamas has built a semi-totalitarian Taliban-type society. You walk around there with a camera and you ask people, or you walk around with a notebook, people are very reticent to speak out against Hamas for very good reason. Human rights there are being abused. You know, religious minorities, women have to wear scarves. There are all sorts of oppression there, and the idea of having some sort of independent investigation under Hamas rule, it's like looking around North Korea and asking, do you like Kim Il-jung?
Why though, Mark, would the UN, you're suggesting that you're in a better position to investigate than the UN? We've just heard from a UN official and employee who is saying allow an international investigation. I mean, I'm sorry, but some of the things you're raising seem to be
I understand the question.
About women wearing scarves or not doesn't seem to stop.
It's not a red herring at all.
Why would you be in a better position to investigate than the UN?
The UN fully knows itself, and it has documented this in its own internal reports, that unfortunately terrorists have used in the past UN facilities for both shooting rockets at Israelis and for other military purposes. There have been discussions about this at at UN headquarters in New York. This unfortunately is not new. And what has happened today is another deliberate example of how Hamas brutalizes the Palestinian people and exploits what are civilian facilities. And then they cry that Israel is hitting civilian targets. We were shot at, we were returning fire. Hamas now is deliberately concealing their Hamas fighters that were hit in our strike against them. I'd like you to get to the bottom of this. If people will talk to you, I think it's very difficult for people in Gaza to speak out against the regime that they suffer under.
Mark, on the one hand, you're asking us to get to the bottom of this, while there is an international organization with credibility that is saying, let's get an international investigation going. I'm sorry, you still haven't really answered my question. Why not allow an international investigation?
I'm saying to you, the methodology of conducting an international investigation in a situation where you have a regime that is built on terror, internal terror, people cannot speak out, it's very difficult. I'd ask you, why don't we send the United Nations to North Korea to find out if people really like President Kim? It's not serious.
Let me ask you this question. Is it time for an immediate ceasefire? That's another demand that's coming from international organizations. They are saying there is a humanitarian crisis that's big enough to warrant an immediate ceasefire to stop the killing.
Israel seeks a permanent ceasefire. So we don't want a band-aid solution that will just explode in everyone's face a week from now or a month from now. What both Palestinians and Israelis require is a permanent solution based on quiet, based on real quiet, and based on the end of illicit arms smuggling into the Gaza Strip. We had discussions last night with the French president. We've been on the phone with European powers, with others. We believe such a deal is possible and it can happen sooner rather than later.
All right, we're going to leave it there for now with Mark Regev. Thanks very much for your comments. I understand that
You look for the two names that I mentioned.
we hope that at some point perhaps Israel will allow international organizations to do that. But anyway, thank you very much.
We
for your
do.
comments.
We're working very closely with the UN on a whole series of issues.
All right, Mark Regev from the Israeli government, thank you very much.